to the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Dr. Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, and we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. I'm Dr. Squee and this is my show. Welcome to it. Hope everyone's well this week. Now, my guest this week is a returning friend of the show. He is a writer, an actor, a director, a producer, a musician, and as we were just discussing before we went live, a wearer of eccentric hair, much like myself. Please, he's here to talk about his new audio drama, which is London After Midnight, which is based on a silent film. I cannot wait to talk to him about that. It's available now on download and vinyl. And if you give me a second, it looks a little bit something like this. But please welcome back to the Dr. Squee Show, your friend of mine, Mr. Kenton Hall.
Hello. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Yourself, sir?
Apparently my hair is eccentric, but so is the rest of me, so it's only trying to keep up. What did I have last time?
Well, I think every time we speak, we've each got different kind of like longer hair, short hair, kind of beard.
There was one point at which I shaved it all off in a fit of pique, and this has just been it gradually growing back, so it needs tending.
Yeah, I feel like we've almost gone back to like when we first spoke, 1,000 Days of Summer. This was kind of your look at the time.
Yeah, well, I'm growing it while I still have it. I'm 47 years old now, so while it's still present, I'm gonna have as much of it as I possibly can. That's what I'm thinking right now.
45, I'm with you, brother.
Yeah,
I get
it. That's where we're sitting.
Well, so yeah. For anyone who's not familiar, tell us a bit about the story of London After Midnight.
London After Midnight was it's a lost silent film. It was made in 1927, starred the great Lon Chaney, and was co-written and directed by the fabulous Tod Browning, who also made Freaks, for your horror movie aficionados.
Yeah.
And the last remaining print of it disappeared disappeared. It went up in flames in a MGM studio fire in 1965. So no one's seen it since that date to this, but it's become kind of iconic lost piece of media because the surviving photographs from it of Lon Chaney in the beaver hat and with the wide staring eyes and the pointy teeth, the man in the beaver hat, that's become a horror icon in and of itself. If you go on any of the Reddit message boards, and dear God, don't go on Reddit message boards, it's insane over there. But then if people are talking about lost media, one of the things that they always want to be found is London After Midnight. It's influenced visually so many horror films since, like The Babadook, The Black Phone. There's a lot of times where horror directors have definitely taken from the visuals of that and kind of given it a spin in their own stories. And it became public domain last year. And we thought that one of the ways in which we could kind of resurrect the story, because the original script still exists for the silent film, was to adapt it as a full cast audio drama. Now, we did get a lot on announcement, a lot of people going, wait, how are you going to make an audio drama out of a film that was silent? I don't know why they all have that voice. I mean, to a man-child.
I've got to jump into this stage because, yeah, I get like, that's the obvious question. But at the same time, it's like, this is why I love you so much. Like you go, right, it's a silent film and it's been lost in a fire in the 60s. Yep. Let's make an audio drama of it in 2024. Like, well, I mean, of course, it was going to be your next kind of project.
My co-producer Jack Bowman, who I've worked with on a few things, and I think he came to me as well as my co-writer Lance Roger Axe, because we are the type of people who you say this sounds like an impossible task and also weird, and we go, oh yeah, sign me up for that. It was a challenge, but in truth, it's no different than any other adaptation. I mean, it's no massive difference in the space between mediums, between a silent film and an audio drama and a book and a movie. They have different rules, they have different needs, and it's about finding out, drilling down to what the core, the spirit of the story is, and making sure you honor that, even though you have to make numerous changes to make it work within the medium that you're using. What we knew we needed to, what the real challenge was, is how do you replicate something whose reputation is so much based on the surviving visuals and still make it something that the audience that wants to experience it will recognize as being London After Midnight. And also, how do you create that in that sort of atmosphere of kind of dread and spookiness in audio that the pictures conjure. I mean, there had been, I think several years ago, they did like a reconstruction on Turner Classic Movies where they used the photo much in the same way as they do Doctor Who recons, where they did photographs and put new music on it, and that's the only way people have been able to experience the story since 1965.
Just in case anyone watched the Daleks in colour, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the old school way they used to do it. They'd have pictures and then they'd have the soundtrack. It's like not the acid trip that was the Daleks in colour, which I'm not like hating against. It was an interesting experiment, not to my taste, but some people loved it. But yeah, this was a very different thing.
Yeah, no, any old school Doctor Who fan knows that when you tried to do a complete rewatch, you had to deal with the fact that you were going to be looking at individual pictures for 7 episodes of Marco Polo. It's just part and parcel of the whole thing. And thank goodness that fans kept the audio over the years, so we even have that. So that's the only thing that's existed with London After Midnight. So yeah, so I guess we're kind of sort of falling into the same places as when they do the Lost Stories at Big Finish. It's about adapting it for the medium and trying to capture the spirit of it. And we were just really fortunate that we had Art Malik, the wonderful Art Malik. Yes, of course. No, please.
Just do a little bit in chronological.
You guide the conversation. I will talk at length. You know this. So.
This is why I like you as a guest. I have to do very little work. I just like one you up, let you go. It's great. Yeah. But I did want to just talk about the original script. So like you don't have the visuals. Well, you've got these still pictures. You haven't got the kind of original film. You get the script. Kind of how much jumped off the page of stuff that you wanted to kind of do? How much was already there? Did you feel kind of what was that process like?
To be honest, I think that because there's like next to no dialogue, I think there's maybe like a dozen overall sort of title cards in the original script. And in fact, I'm actually thinking about it. They may not have actually been in the script that we had, because title cards tended to be written by someone else in silent film days. The scenarios were purely for the visual purposes. That's not true across all films before someone leaps in and starts, well, actually, but in this case. But the script by Waldemar Young and based on Tod Browning's story, The Hypnotist, existed. And to be honest, kind of read it, processed it, and then threw it away, because we had to create something that was very dialogue based, which means we had to just take the characters and create our version of it while still honoring the spirit of the original script. So we worked from the story of the original script, but even then there are elements in a silent film that are compressed just by the nature of that medium. So we had to make changes, and every change that we made was all about how does it still feel like London After Midnight if we make this change? And that was kind of our guiding light. But Lance and I kind of working in sort of relay, where I'd write 10, 15 pages, send them off to him. He'd rewrite, add 10, send it back to me. I'd rewrite, add 10. And we worked back and forth like that. And I don't normally work like that. I'm not on the whole a natural co-writer, because I tend to just kind of, like you say, I wind myself up and go. So it was really interesting to try and preserve two people's voices as well as preserve two past people's voices at the same time and make it feel. So it was a really interesting experiment for me, and it was great. I mean, in terms of like the production and the writing of it, it's probably one of the smoothest and most enjoyable jobs I've done. In terms of the promotion of it, you know, that's a whole other thing, but we'll get into that later. But then we had a script, and it was a case of how do we cast this not just to service the story, but also to kind of, you know, have people we can hang a hook on for promotion. We have to think about those things.
Yeah.
It's always story first, but you do have to think about, like, you know, where's the audience and who's going to be interested in it. At the same time, what was going to be exciting to work on, and who that's sort of well respected in the audio acting world that we could bring in to kind of give it that cachet too. And people obviously that know that medium and can work well within that medium.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Art Malik. I mean, like, he's been in everything. So I just made a quick, like, little list. But Jewel in the Crown, True Lies, Doctor Who. He's been in numerous TV shows, films. He's worked in every medium, and just he has got such a gorgeous voice for this. Just how wonderful to, like, work your cast around kind of that voice, you know.
I'm happy to report as well. He's an absolute sweetheart. And so good to work with, and so he's like every lead in anything. You need someone that's going to be team leader, you know, and who's going to set the tone for the production. And we recorded over 2 days, and Art was with us for the second of those 2 days, and he just set the tone in the studio. The minute he walked in, everyone was so excited for him to be there. But the moment he walked in, he was there to work, and he was there to be part of an ensemble, even though he was in the lead role. And I had the experience, and I don't know why I'd forgotten this, seeing as I'd co-written the script and I was co-directing the production, but I hadn't clicked in my head. I think probably because I was so tired with all the puzzle pieces flying around, that we had a two-hander scene. That was just the two of us in the studio. And between the pandemic and sort of various other things, it had been a while since I'd acted at any level, and certainly not against someone of his sort of stature and ability. And there was just a moment, and obviously in the studio, we were able to do it all in one studio with us in a round on multiple microphones, which not all audio drama can be done that way. Sometimes you have to do things remotely just for cost, but it was great to have the actors reacting off of each other. But there was me and my microphone with my stand with my script on it, and Art across the way, his stand, his script on it. And it's very easy because you don't have to learn all of the lines verbatim. You have your script there in radio. And I looked up during part of the scene, and I just looked up, and he was looking right at me, and he was kind of sort of that slight tilt leaning away from his stand, and there was just a glint in his eye, and it was basically the unspoken question was, "Have you come to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've come to play. Let's go." And so we just played this scene, me and Art Malik, eye to eye, and I've seldom been happier with my clothes on. It was.
I mean,
and
that's only after Art insisted that you put them back.
Yeah,
on.
exactly. It's like I don't think this is appropriate, and I think we had it in the contract that you do remain clothed at all times.
Damn it! I was hoping you didn't read that fine print that you wrote.
It was just beautiful, and it's one of those career moments that I'll treasure, just because he brought your game up. Is that kind of actor that you felt your own abilities grow in strength because he was giving you the space to, and he was giving you stuff that you just couldn't help but react to because it was just so in the moment. And it's hard sometimes with something that's kind of gothic because there is a heightened quality to some of the dialogue. It's very theatrical in some ways, and to sort of create the reality of that and make it still pop for the emotions and still being able to play it with some reality to it is, it's a talent, and he had it in spades. So yeah, Art Malik is a gorgeous man, and I'd work with him on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I really did. Like, I've heard you in different things. I've heard Dan Starkey in lots of different things, which we'll get onto him in a second. Obviously, like, for anyone who doesn't know, he's Strax and many other Sontarans in Doctor Who, as well as being a just wonderful actor in his own right. But that's probably what he's most famous for. And just hearing the three of you, I really do think there was a bit of alchemy on this one, particularly. Like it did feel like you three, I think it's safe to say, are kind of at the core of the cast. Like even though there's other wonderful players,
Yeah, and Beth Eyre, of course. Well, everyone, but you know, Beth Eyre as Lucy. I think I'd put above me certainly.
I was just talking. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I guess it seems like the plot rolls around what you three guys have done, and she does an absolutely fantastic job. But just that seems like at the core of the story to me. I don't know.
Okay, I'll as there's a compliment to me buried in there somewhere.
No. Please correct me. That just might be the way I heard it that day. It's like and maybe I think there is something also about kind of stories of that time which you're adapting, unless you make even wider sweeping changes. They are usually, I guess, more written with mentally.
Well,
I think you did a good job of kind of like
it was definitely
something
that we really worked on from the original
Yeah.
script, of actually giving Lucy a lot more agency in the story and not being sort of a sort of damsel in distress. She actually does play an active role, particularly in the resolution, and as sort of taken into the confidence. And I just had to also with Beth. The great thing is because I hadn't done like any in studio stuff with a full cast for ages, and which did mean, because we did have a sort of not a love scene in too adult a fashion, but certainly a romantic scene where we had in the story had to kiss, but of course you don't do that in the studio. You do a lot of hand kissing. And it is a very weird thing to do, and it is one of those things where you think this is not a job for a grown-up, but hell, ain't it fun. So Beth was a great hand kissing partner to have to your left, kissing her own hand while I kissed mine. It was it's truly romantic. And
you're trying to lose yourself in the part, and then you go, it's like, oh baby, come this way. It's got to be distracting in some way.
I mean, to be fair, that's usually my move in real life. So you know, it was I'd done my prep work. But no, there was a huge alchemy in the cast, and like there was everyone. And then this is something I think if you're an actor who writes, you try to do, is you make sure that everyone who's taken the time to come and be something has a moment to shine and to give their best work. Because it's something like when I teach screenwriting, or if I'm script editing or script doctoring something, the first thing I usually do is like say to whoever it is, it's like, you can't ask someone to come and play something if there's nothing for them to do, because you don't get the best work out of someone if they haven't got something they can latch on to and go, yeah, I've got some meat here that I can get into. And that's from the biggest part to the smallest part, because any decent story is inhabited by all of its characters, and not just the sort of the ones above the title, you know.
Yeah, I would say it's like, and I didn't mean to sound anything but
no.
Amazing in it, and just I think like unless you kind of like gender swap some of the characters for things at the time, it's hard to describe, but it's like certainly in your writing, I like the character felt very fleshed out. It did feel like she kind of had her own agency, which I guess was something not of the original time.
Yeah, I mean, it is something I think that, I mean, people bang on a lot about diversity. What are you doing diversity for? So, well, because it's a diverse planet, you morons.
More interesting.
And and like the same people will bitch about the same stories being told over and over again, and you're like, well, maybe let other people tell their stories, and you'll get some different stories, just off the top of my head. But also, I think as a writer, you have a responsibility to think about that, and to, however much the tropes exist, and you kind of have to play with them to sort of, particularly if you're trying to replicate something from the past, it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to fix some of the inequities or make some attempt to address the inequities of the time. Because again, we had really great actors coming in to play Lucy, and we wanted a Lucy that she'd be proud to play. So, you know, that's something. And I think as well, you know, being male writers, I think you have to be very conscious of your blind spots. And I rewrote a script some years ago, and the people who had written the original draft, they weren't bad people. I would say they're very aware of sort of equality and very pro equality, but one of the female characters was a complete damsel in distress in it, and the first thing I had to do in a meeting was go, this can't exist in the 2020s. You know, this is not something that we can allow to go through as a piece of cinema for a modern audience, or for any audience really, if they had any sense. But yeah, and you don't think of a story like this as being, you know, it's not a banner waver for anything, but that's the whole point, is that if we're really going to address the problems with how women are often written, especially by male writers, then you have to do it all the time. You have to think about three-dimensional female characters all the time, non-male characters. Like when you're writing about anyone who's been sort of sidelined in society, the biggest thing you just have to keep going back to is, yeah, they're a human being, you know, with like a whole inner life and exactly like everyone else's, and maybe just write them the same as you write somehow male characters to be complicated. Maybe you let people who aren't male be complicated as well. You know, it doesn't seem to be rocket science, and yet so many people sort of just forget. And I can't say that, you know, I'll ever nail it perfectly. There will always be blind spots, but I think awareness of the fact that you have blind spots and that you have privilege that you got to work around is so vital to creatives, because we're trying to make people feel as though they're less alone. And if we're not doing that for everybody, then we're not really doing our jobs properly. And you can call it political correctness gone mad all you want, but I will throw things at you. So it's, you know, you lay down your money and you make your bet.
And I'm not saying that we, like, our generation can't grow with the times, but it's also like what you put out there. So like the fact that you're putting out there stuff which is aimed to be more diverse, have more kind of strong roles for all. I think that kind of soup then goes into consciousness, so that when the next person's writing something, they've kind of got that in their mind. They've kind of got that more broader palette, which
Absolutely.
they're naturally working from. There's less work to work from it, perhaps for the next generation, than there is for ours, because we've grown up on so many biases.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I have sort of daughters in their early 20s, and I listen to like the way that they talk about the media that they consume and what they're looking for, and they're looking for those things now, and that's good. It's because, you know, it's a business driven by money, so the audience needs to demand it as much as with as much vehemence as the creatives attempt to put it there. So thankfully, I think that is changing once all we old fogies drop off the map, which go from I'm a working writer and musician. It'll happen any day now, so it'll be fine.
The way I live and eat, yeah. We were talking about the cast though. Let's not leave Dan Stark airline though.
No, of course,
because absolutely wonderful. But what I really loved about this, it kind of just goes straight into the action. This telling of the tale. I don't know what the original was like, but from the outset, he is just right in there, right? Kind of like he is a man, obviously, so disturbed by what's happening right from the beginning. Tell us a bit about working from him, the energy which he brought there.
I mean, it was great. I mean, Dan was a happy accident, really, because I mean, he's definitely someone I'd always wanted to work with. But we had someone cast in that part, and just a great performer. They would have been equally good in it, but sadly, health and complications around the schedule meant that they're very close to recording that day. They were unable to join us. So Dan was suggested by someone who had worked with him on our production, that had worked with him on something else, and therefore had contact with him. So there was a moment of sort of blind panic where we were ringing agents and stuff the night before the recording, and it just so happened that something else for him had fallen through, and there was a gap. So he joined us, and so he had the script the night before. So that just underlines how good of a performer he is. But yeah, he's just brilliant to work with, and someone else that a lot of directing him came down to not that wasn't great, but like, do you have anything else, so that we just have options. So, but yeah, like every great actor, you like being directed as well, and which that makes it easier for everyone. I've never met a very good actor that doesn't like direction, including myself, and I'm an okay actor.
I mean, I'm stunned to hear that he kind of got heard about the part so like quickly towards recording, because that's just such a nuanced performance. It's amazing. So I now want to listen to it again just to like, it's like seriously, that's the next day. He is that rudely talented. It reminds me of
he is. He absolutely is. I think he read it and he knew. And I think as well, with acting, like, he's extraordinary as Strax, and he has played a lot of parts in his career, and he's just a gifted actor all around. But I think maybe he hadn't had the opportunity in a while, at least, to play that kind of sort of upper class villain. And or is he a villain? I'm gonna spoil my own work, and then they say a guy who did a thing with some stuff. I haven't spoiled anything. That's fine. He's a dick anyway. So
he's not the most lovely of characters.
Very beginning.
Yeah.
But he just dove into it, and again, he was someone who was glorious to act across from. So
yeah, no, it's a stunning performance. Just to talk about a bit about the production side of it.
Yeah.
So unless I'm mistaken, maybe it's like just on my MP3, but it's like sounded like you'd added a few hisses and a few effects, like kind of like oldie timey recording, as well as the wonderful music you've added. Maybe you could sort of talk a bit about that, or maybe I've just imagined it because you sucked me into that period so much.
I don't know if we added hisses. There's definitely Rory O'Shea, who did the sound design on it and designed it in sort of Dolby Atmos as well. There was a lot of work going into creating, because I think that's one of the biggest things with audio drama is creating a mood. And so there's a lot of spooky stuff going on in the sound mix, but because we got the opportunity to have it mixed in Atmos. So if you get it on the right system, it's very immersive.
The sound quality was great. It just sounded like, I don't know, maybe again, there was a fire effect as well, I think, at one stage, but maybe I've just imagined it because it just
there's lots of effects in there. I'm sure we're not talking at cross purposes. It's fine. But it's the biggest thing was because of the way that audio drama is recorded. You're reliant on getting the performances from the cast and then cutting those together in a way that flows, because you've got multiple takes, you've got flubs, you've got all the normal things that you need to cut around and cut together. And thankfully, there were only, the odd times where you needed to kind of tighten the gaps between performances, because for the most part, if you had a run of actors working together, that scene's there. It feels like it's already there because the dynamics are in the room. But then we had times where like we didn't have every actor on the same day in the studio, so you'd have someone standing in, and then they'd need to be swapped out with the actor that was actually playing the role. I ended up playing 2 roles in it in the end, simply because I think we just ran out of combination of running out of budget and running out of time to get one of the other roles in. So there is actually 2 of me in there, and I don't even know if you clocked it, because
I don't think I did.
I
don't remember.
There's actually quite other than Hibbs, which is my main role, which is Sir James's secretary. There's one other character that is also me, which is Fernsby the gardener, who's 2 browses, Aretha 2 browses.
Right.
That's also me, and that's.
I thought that was like, I mean, it's great, and it kind of like I was going, that's such an interesting choice of voice. Like I love it, but like it's interesting. No, like I see part of it might have been the necessity of changing your voice as well, but it's like it really captivated me, that performance. I
Excellent.
There we go. It was you.
I would like to put this on my CV now.
I was like, why? Like, genuinely, just because I've done a little bit of acting myself, like I was like, I wonder why they chose that kind of particular voice. Like it's really got me. It's like it's just something fascinating about it, because it seems
it is partially, I think, one of the greatest examples of this I've ever saw, and this is another project that everyone should check out as well, which is Children of the Circus, which is the official sequel, licensed and approved by Stephen Wyatt, to The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and it features all the surviving cast, including Sylvester and Sophie, in different roles, because it's not a story that features the Doctor and his companion, but it's a story that features the sort of other characters from Greatest Show. And Sylvester and Sophie happily came in and did other new characters that I'd written for them. But Sophie played 2 roles in it, and she asked to do both of the roles because we knew we wanted her in it, and it was a case of giving her the script and seeing what appealed to her. And the characters had to have conversations with each other quite a lot. Now, I have a scene in London After Midnight where Hibbs and Fernsby have a conversation with each other. I was not foolhardy enough to try and do it live. I did it in 2 runs with a stand-in. Sophie did her entire character run for both hour-long episodes in one long recording session with the whole cast, and she did both parts live and had whole conversations with each other in 2 utterly different voices. And I don't think they got edited at all. She was just so. Sophie Aldred is, as wonderful as she is as Ace, and I don't think anyone really realizes what an incredible voice actor she is. And I've been in love with her.
Katie Manning does the same thing. She's had she wrote one, I believe, but it was certainly one where there was like multiple characters which she was playing, which she gets like, just record it. I just did it all in like one on.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's
doing that.
It's fantastic, and I think it's definitely, I think, something we all aspire to, and I think all of us can kind of like do it to a degree, but nothing like I saw Sophie do it. It was so pristine, and there was no confusion between the voices at all. But that was kind of that was what I was aiming for with Fernsby and Hibbs, is to make them so utterly different that you don't notice, because you hear that at the end of a lot of audio dramas, which are other parts played by members of the cast. It's because voice actors, they can do that. They have voices in their repertoire, and I have others, but Fernsby is my special. Fernsby is actually a voice that I've been doing since I was like 20 in a band. It's like there's like 2 other surviving people in the world who would hear that voice and know what voice I'm doing, because we used to drive around on tour and ask for directions in that voice to confuse people, because we were a young band, we were idiots. So we'd wind down the window, go, "You know the way to Mesnes Street, mate?" And we did it for like a whole tour, and we thought it was hysterical. And we'd just say weird things in the voice, because we were all like sort of young and very often intoxicated. We just confused the hell out of the entire UK, asking for directions in an old Cockney voices. And that I just brought that voice back for Fernsby. I just resurrected him, and I've given him immortality, I think, now. So
very nice, very nice. And a little bit about also the music, of course, which you co-wrote.
I did, yes.
Were you listening to any stuff from the time? Did you have kind of any influence going in, or is it just the feel that you had for it?
My co-writer on the score, Brett Richardson, who was in my band Ist and works in The Necessary Measures, my current band as well, and a great producer. And he also trades under The Shadow That Melts the Flesh, because he also is one of us. And he makes incredibly spooky, atmospheric instrumental music, usually often played on one guitar, and it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he's got all these instruments going, but he has a pedal board the size of God that allows him to do weird and wonderful things with sound. So I knew I wanted to work with him on this, and he would keep me sane, because I was trying to do the music and take part in the dialogue edit and take part in all the other directorial and production decisions we were making. So we worked where a lot of time he was sort of creating atmosphere and I was creating melodies, and then we'd swap and we'd take turns sort of adding things to it. So it was a really kind of give and take collaborative approach to it, and I'm really proud of the score for that. But I played a lot of piano on it, and I am by nature a guitar player, so my piano skills are largely limited to composing. I know enough my way around the keyboard to write songs on a piano, but for the most part, if I've ever needed really good piano on something, I've got a really good piano player in. and gone, here's my ham-fisted version of this, now play it proper. But we were, you know, it was just the two of us. We did everything on the score. So it was me with a tiny little keyboard in my studio, just playing the piano parts, and then Brett played some piano on it as well, and we made weird sounds, and so it was kind of, I knew I wanted a piano to be at the center of it, to cause a kind of nod to the music it might have had initially. Of, you know, I can imagine a piano player in the corner of a cinema playing along with a silent film. So there was that, but we also, the watchword on it all the time in the tone meetings was always atmosphere, atmosphere, atmosphere. So we wanted to play a part, and then, you know, finding a way of melding that with the sound design, which also has weird, wonderful sounds going on, so that it all comes together and feels like an organic whole. There's one bit in the script where someone had to play the piano and make a mistake, like actually in the scene they're playing the piano. So I had to be stunt piano mistake, which means I had to make a deliberate mistake instead of what I usually do, which is accidental mistakes that are actually mistakes. And that took me longer to work out how to do convincingly than making real mistakes. So yeah, that's that's the business that is show, ladies and gentlemen.
And just to sort of like talk a bit about the enduring legacy. So you talked about how this kind of was a Lost in a Fire, it's an old silent film, but there's something about this story which, like you've said, has permeated the pop culture. It's kind of like so many bits from this are featured elsewhere. What do you think it is about this story, like in general, or just for you, which kind of makes it so enduring?
I mean, obviously part of is the fact that it's lost. There's often a lot of talk is like, if a print of it were ever found, would people be disappointed because they've built it up so much in their minds? It was a version of it was remade. The story doesn't remain quite the same, by Tod Browning sort of 10 or so years later as Mark of the Vampire with Bela Lugosi, which takes some of the central idea of it, but that exists to be seen. But again, that isn't London After Midnight. And so there's this sort of Lon Chaney's sort of genius with character creation, but also, who doesn't love a gothic vampire mystery ghost story? You know, there is something about that gothic vibe which has survived in pop culture through things as diverse as, you know, stuff like The Others through to the Addams Family. So that gothic, you know, house full of secrets and mystery has remained something that we're interested in and fascinated by. So if you could do something that feels even remotely fresh within that. But there were lots of inspirations that I took outside of London After Midnight itself, and I'm sure Lance would say exactly the same thing. You know, I thought a lot about an Inspector Coles, the Priestley play, when I was writing it, because that's one of my favorite pieces of writing of all time. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head as well, and also some of the darker gothic corners of Sherlock Holmes, any of those, which I love. Sherlock Holmes and the Woman Who Wasn't is an anthology currently available on Amazon from Oak Tree Books, edited by Kenton Hall. So there were a lot of diverse influences, and I think anytime you write in genre, and you know I have, and I love science fiction, I love comedy science fiction, and I love mystery stories. I love a lot of different genre pieces, but you're always like, how do I filter that through my way of looking at things and make it feel like it's still me? Because I always find that with adaptation, or like with Children of the Circus, writing in someone else's sandbox, or Sherlock Holmes writing in someone else's sandbox, is like, how do you not lose your own voice in that when it's not entirely your creation? And for me, it's just I think if you've been writing for a long time, I don't think you can help but let your own voice sort of bleed into things, and I think it should be that way because it's mine and Lance's impression of a gothic mystery vampire ghost story. It's driven by all the many ways in which we've consumed those kind of stories, whether it's films or audios or comic books. It's our reaction to that. But again, I still got to write the kind of dialogue that I like to write. There's jokes in it. I'm a big believer that, like, particularly if you're writing things that are meant to be unsettling or spooky or scary, that if you can get a joke in right before the jump scare, then the jump scare is going to hit twice as hard. I'm a big fan of mixing tones. I get really annoyed when people go, "Oh, it looks like there's so many different tonal changes in it." Good. That's what I like. That's what I like in things. Life has different tones in it. Why shouldn't art?
Yeah, and as I say, I don't know how much is from the original, how much is kind of adaptation, but it's like the fact that that is not only an amazing gothic kind of horror story, but it's also a detective story. There's also a twist in there. There is so much meat on the bone of this one that you've got so many kind of elements to play with. Adding a little bit of humor, adding these other elements, I think kind of it's already a world which is adapting to different kind of types of story in one. So I think it's kind of quite apt for that as well in that way.
I think so. And I think if you look back at the best examples of those kind of gothic detective fiction or gothic, there is a rich seam of humor, or at very least wit. I'm not saying we managed wit, but we aim at wit.
Yep, you did.
And in all the things that I like best, and I suspect Lance might say similar. And because obviously, being a co-writer, Lance bringing in all sorts of his own influences, his own experience as a writer as well. I think if there's a time joke in there, it's probably mine. But some of the best sort of plot devices came from Lance, and in the end, what was great is I couldn't tell you for certain who wrote what anymore, because we both had our fingers messily in it the whole time. So it is a Gestalt script. It's an entity created from two weird writers, a Canadian and American. So take that. North America for the win. Because they don't get a lot of attention, North America.
And I believe, much like our own country here, it's still going swimmingly over there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's all fine.
It's its own gothic vampire ghost story right now. So what are you gonna do?
Jesus, well, yeah, in America you've got a couple of like practically ghosts running for office. So anyway, sir, we should talk about the kind of like also the wonderful vinyl release. I know you're a fan of vinyl yourself. Here it is in its represented glory. Tell us a bit about that release and kind of what you get on there.
I think that's one of those things. Is like, there's so much digital content, and this is the tough thing. I mean, people, we've been very fortunate that it's won a bunch of like sort of awards on the like film festival circuit that do audio drama, and the people that have reviewed it have been very kind. The people that have heard it, bought it and heard it, have been very kind. But there's still it's an endemic problem, is that people have so much free content out there that they don't value content and what it costs to make. Now, an audio drama doesn't have anything like the overheads of a film, but if you want to get a cast of the caliber that we gathered, if you want to get a professional production and it's sound designed by a professional and it's mixed in Dolby Atmos and it's released in as big a way as we could manage, then it costs money. And we that produced it, we don't get paid until it gets bought. And so like that's 6 months of unpaid work. And so like I think being Canadian, I don't have that allergy to talking about money that the Brits do. I'm shyer than an American, but more bolshy than an English person. Because people need to go and buy it. So we tried to create like sort of vinyl as an attractive package for something that is being distributed digitally and is available digitally. But for those people who collect and want a beautiful piece of something in their homes as well as listening to it, that's what the vinyl's for. And we need to to get those into the factory, we need a lot more people to come and buy them. We did at a limited run of CDs because some people really still like CD. Every time I put anything out music, I think, oh, I'm not going to do CDs this time. No one buys CDs, and it's usually oftentimes the thing that sells best. So people like to have a piece of physical media. But it's also available on digital, because I know the convenience of that and the way that people listen to a lot of things. We've tried to keep the cost of it as low as we can, because we know that it's really expensive to buy all the things that you'd like to experience. So I think that my pitch is just, I'm pretty confident in ensuring that you'll have a good time with this. So come along to our Bandcamp and pick yourself up a version. And with all the physical ones, you get a digital copy as well. So you're covered on both sides. And there's a book.
There's a book. Tell us about that. Plug the book as well. Yeah.
Well, this is the other thing. Is like trying to get the story to as big an audience as possible. It means trying to tell the story in a lot of different ways. So somewhere along the process, I said, I think someone had mentioned a script book, and Jack, my co-director and our other producer who directed it with me, he was like, I'd love to write some production diaries of how this was made, so that people get a sense of how an audio drama comes together. And then I said, well, I'd really like to write this as a novel, so adapt the script into a novel. So those three ideas between the three of us, that's the great thing about the trio of us, is three different ideas became a companion book, which is just released it's available exclusively on Amazon and our Bandcamp at the moment. So it's ebook, hardback, paperback. And it's got all those three things. It's got a copy of the script that we wrote. It's got production diaries from Jack with comic interjections from me, and my own sort of commentary, as you might expect. And then there's a brand new novelization of the script by me. So why take three books into the shower when you can just take one? And provided you have a waterproof Kindle, I wouldn't recommend taking the paperback or the hardback into the shower, because bad things will happen. But the hardback's good for swatting flies. It makes an excellent coaster. The vinyl are great coasters. You can get a whole sort of round of tea on them. It's a pot in the middle. It's great. So we're multi-purpose. We're trying to serve as wide an audience as we can.
Look, I know you creative types. When you say pot in the middle, look, we're not advertising that here.
Don't be silly. You don't put pot on record. You snort coke off record.
Oh, sorry. Amateur hour here.
Yeah, Jesus. Come on.
See, the beauty of me not being on the radio anymore is I don't have to edit that out for them.
When you spill Coca-Cola on a record and you sniff it back up, that's what I was saying.
Yeah. Sod it. We don't have to edit. Fuck it. We just do lines off the record. It's fine. We're on the internet.
I don't know what you're talking about. No, because seriously, this is why I vape, because I have no other vices anymore, and it's depressing. I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I quit all the other exciting additions to my brain chemistry that a young musician is want to encounter. And now all I've got is 3% nicotine that tastes like strawberry. That's what I have left to me. It's so. And
you just dip that in a bit of Coke and it's delicious.
Yeah. The heroin's the kick. The little bit of heroin at the back. That's the real kick to it. But it keeps me off the crack pipe. What do you want from me?
And on that bombshell, Kenton, thank you as always for joining me. Always a pleasure to catch up. Is there anything else you'd like to point them towards?
Just go out and find it's londonaftermidnightaudio.bandcamp.com, or you can also find us through londonaftermidnight.co.uk. Just give it a shot, because I think I can guarantee you a good solid hour of chills and spills, and definitely some brilliant performances, and also 2 other performances by me. But also, go and find my Sherlock Holmes anthology that's also available now. Definitely check out Children of the Circus, Doctor Who fans who I know watch this. That definitely still needs to be heard and read by more people. There's a novelization of that and an audio drama with songs by Christopher Guard, produced and directed by Barnaby Eaton-Jones, written by me. With all the surviving cast of Greatest Show in the Galaxy. My album's still available, Idiopath. That's also on vinyl. Buy lots of that. Bisection, my book, my first book. Always want more people to read that. Look, just buy something that has my name on it. God damn it! That's all. That's all I'm saying.
And it's called Bisection. That's not bisection.
Yeah,
It's bisection. By bisection.
It's by Kenton Hall. No, come on, keep me in strawberry watermelon vape fluid for the love of God. That's all I'm asking for you. That's all I ask. I've stopped eating. I'm just getting by on the calories in this. Come on, keep a Canadian alive. It's either this, a GoFundMe, or OnlyFans, and nobody wants the other two from me. So just buy a book, buy a CD, buy a vinyl.
In fact, if he doesn't get up to a certain amount of sales by like the end of the week, the OnlyFans is launched. That's
the OnlyFans is launched. If you want decrepit Canadian OnlyFans, God help you. That's all I'm saying.
And if you don't buy enough by the week afterwards, our collabs go up there. And really, you do not want to see that. That was awkward for all involved.
And then the other two horsemen of the apocalypse ride in, and the whole show's over.
I mean, the cameraman scratched his eyes out immediately after he was done with that shoot.
Absolutely. I'd sell myself on the street, but I can't afford to go bankrupt. That's just...
I've been Dr. Squee. That was my show. Joining me has been Kenton Hall, and a world where you can be truly anything. Live like you've got two hearts, and please be kind. Just before I end the stream, because I always forget, please, that's Matt Lee's music. Check him out online. He does our theme tune. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone.